Look what we got. We got our green vinyl. Time to get it installed. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do this whole bottom layer. Hopefully that turns out. And if it does, maybe we'll do the top if we have enough. All right, let's get to work. We have our cowl rough mounted on there. We know our spinner placement and stuff is good. Now we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna open these vents up. So I'm just going to use, I love this thing. This thing works really well, a cordless Dremel. I'm gonna get in there, I'm gonna open up just 3 of these vents right now in the back because I know I have to cut out my spark plug teardrop in there, and I don't wanna cut too much in here if this is going to be an issue and then have it weak and it breaks. So I know these 3 are going to be good to cut out. We'll see about that one later, and then we're going to show how to lay the template over and get our spark plugs, start getting our mufflers on there, get the rest of the cowl cut out, and start wiring up this engine stuff. All right, guys, you can see in the time lapse, I hope here, what I did, and unfortunately there's just a lot of on again, off again type of stuff here. You're going to pull this thing apart numerous times, and that's okay. It's for the sake of making it nice. So the first thing I did was I took my cardboard and we cut that template right there, and I then used one side, took it off after I cut that the way I needed it around there, and I just made a complete copy of one. I took it off and made a complete copy for the other side. Now I just put this back where I want it, here on the side of this fuselage, right there. So the engine and everything is right back in its place. I made a template for the bottom for the exhaust stack, and then we're going to fit this one here on the other side. And you want to make sure that those are taped down really good. You don't want that tape or those templates moving. Then once you have that, now we have to pull the engine off of here so we could get our cowl in the place and use our templates to cut those. So let's time lapse removing the engine. All right, so engine's out. Cowl is mounted in place with all of our screws, so I know it's exactly where it was before. I'm going to lay my templates over, and then what I'm going to do is outline the stuff that needs to come out. And for the stuff at the bottom, we're going to have to work at getting something to come straight up through that exhaust stack. And this pattern is going to get you like 98% there. You may have to do a little bit more on your own, but it'll get you close. I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut those out first, put that engine in, and then cut these. I'm just looking at the position of those front ones and thinking I think I'd like to make sure that those are in first and then worry about the bottom. So let's go ahead and do that. If we got to take the engine on and off one more time, that's okay. Let's go ahead and get those openings cut. You want to play Jenga with airplanes? This cowl is it. I'm really glad that I waited to do the exhaust separate. All right, let's not do that at the same time. So it wasn't that hard following the templates and getting this stuff roughly cut out. But here was the issue. This nose tapers in a little bit towards the front, so it actually gets more narrow and harder to get the cowl to stretch over here. And I didn't want to crack and blister the paint trying to stretch it over. So I needed to figure out a formula. The formula for getting it on like this is simply going to be, before the cowl is bolted on, to fish your plug wires through the holes and let them hang out here. Keep your spark plugs out. So once the cowl is on and mounted, the wires are hanging out the holes. You have to make those big enough to get your spark plugs in using the tool. And then you can slide those over. And I don't know, guys. I know there's a lot of people that got issues with spark plug boots and stuff hanging out of the side. And I can teardrop mold something there and paint it. But I'll be honest with you, I think I can live with that. That's not bad at all. And there's even less over here because it sits back a little bit. So that thing is clean. It's not going to rub. Now that we have it here, though, we can take our Sharpie. I have a tendency to lose crap on my bench. I'm sorry. So then half the time in the videos I spend looking for stuff. But now that I have a good idea of where everything is, so you can see that that's a little high right there. Okay, well, I can deal with that. But in here, we would rather mold that out so we can bring that thing around in there. We can smooth out some of this stuff by bringing this over. And having that come into there. So I think that that gives us a pretty good idea of exactly what needs to go on there. That's how much extra trimming I want to do. And then if we look what we got going on over here, I think the only thing I got to straighten up is literally that piece. Not much at all. So with that being said, now we're going to get off into doing the exhaust. So we're going to pull this apart again. Spark plug boots will come off, plugs will come out, and then we'll take the screws out, pull the cowl off, and that allows us to do some more with getting this exhaust going. Let's do it. If you didn't catch it earlier, I'm glad I caught it. Well, now my mufflers are on the right way. That's chamfered right there. That rolls with the cowl, and I've been making sure that my smoke nipples are out, but I had them right on left and left on right, and that pushed the nozzles too far front where it would look like Mater from Cars. So anyway, now it's back another 2 inches. Really, it's not a huge difference, but it's going to be a difference. So again, there's the template laid over. Everything's fastened from the side. And now I used a Sharpie and just a screwdriver and just basically followed that pattern and that template to get my outline. And then what I'll do is I'll just use the muffler itself just to make sure that everything fits and is circular and it's not going to rub or rattle. And hopefully we're able to get the cowl slid over that exhaust and it sticks out and I don't have to create longer slots going back or anything else. But anyway, everything's marked. So let's go ahead and start grinding. With that being said, I have to make holes in the cowling for the access bolts for the mufflers. The mufflers will be dropped into the cowl and then put on from the outside. And you can see here I have a tripod stand with a laser. And that right now is shining, if you can see that, right up through that bolt hole. So I'm gonna leave the plane where it is. I'll pull the mufflers off, I'll put the cowling on, put it in place, and then I know exactly on the cowl where I need to make that hole. You can do this with the mufflers, you can do it with everything with this method. And there you go. There you can see where we're going to have to make that access hole. Look how that screen turned out. Man, did that turn out nice, and our light is in there nice and flush and not sticking out with that O-ring spacer we used. So we're gonna repeat this method here and on the other side. We're gonna have to make 2 on this side, 1 here because the other one goes up through the exhaust. So there you can see we have our exhaust cut in, and I just marked, we're gonna do a little bit more trimming around that side and just a little bit around there so that way the cowl doesn't vibrate against the exhaust and cause me issues. But otherwise, I'm debating what a lot of people do is they'll make these longer grooves so that way they could put the mufflers on and slide the cowl over. I went ahead and ran the bolts up through the bottom to hold those into place, which means the mufflers would be hanging there as I put the cowl in. The cowl's not going to be super easy getting on and off with this big engine in here and all the stuff that we have to do a certain way, but I don't know, I prefer the look over it over the ease and accessibility. Once it's in there and it's done, really shouldn't have to be taking it apart all that often. So I think that's what I'm going to do, and then eventually we'll make our cowl baffles and stuff in there. But let's pull this off one more time, and then we've made the cooling kind of vent down at the bottom an idea for that. And we're going to have to hack that out and sand that down. But we need to get, they say 3 to 1 or as much cooling as you can get is best. So we're going to open that up a good bit right there in a symmetrical oval. So that way it can let the airflow out. Everything that's being baffled and coming in this way will have exit. But anyway, we're going to pull this off one more time and do our final trimmings there and hopefully be pretty close. All right, guys, so the cowl is finally done. I'm happy with that. We have our smoke and okies installed there, so those are getting ready to go in. It is time to start to finalize everything for the engine install. So now we're going to go ahead and throw our bolts in there. We're going to get everything tightened down, and then we're going to start routing sensors, RPM sensor, temperature sensor, anything here that we're going to use. We're going to mount up our ignition and get this thing solidified, probably right under there into place, and then start working on throttle linkages. So it's time to wrap up everything here. Let's get it done. On this model, look at this gorgeous tunnel they gave us right here behind the carburetor going back. So once we install all of our wiring, our ignition, everything else, we're going to feed all of those wires, fuel lines, smoke lines, anything I need to through that opening. You also have a spot going up into the engine area or engine box if you need to, but that's where we're going to start installing our Hall effect sensor for picking up RPM, and we're also going to use 2 temp sensors with the MT300, so I have one for each cylinder head. After giving this some thought, we're going to go ahead and mount. We have our ignition module. This is on a Seacraft ignition module holder. A lot of people 3D print them. I like this one. I mean, 3D printing right now I can do, but all that stuff's buried. So I have a Seacraft one. I'm going to use it, and just simply I have a little bit of Velcro strapping around there. I'm going to place this instead of underneath here in the corner of this box. And the reason being, if I put it underneath, it restricts the passage of the choke wire going through there, the choke linkage. It's going to restrict the throttle linkage. It restricts all of that stuff, and I don't want to deal with that. I want to keep that passage open, so I'm going to mount it right here. That'll give me the ability to loop this spark plug wire to here, and it's going to give me the ability to still get this one underneath and over to the other side. So we're going to go ahead and mark this, and we're going to drill some pilot holes. So let's get to drilling. For my RPM sensor, I just take the magnetic Hall effect that they give you, and I use the magnet here on the front engine hub. So I don't use the extra magnet that comes with the RPM sensor. I use that magnet there. I attach it onto a flat carbon rod. 2 layers of shrink tube gives you about I don't know, maybe a millimeter air gap in there, which is okay. And I'll apply a little bit of hot glue, and I will space this so it's right over the magnet, and hot glue that to the engine, secure it with zip ties with just a dab or a dot or 2 of hot glue, and then I will fish that through with the temp sensors, and that will give me crankshaft RPM. The next step in running our smoke system is to get the plumbing installed on the outside. So here you can see we're using the high temp Viton that will attach to the fittings right here on your mufflers, and for that we are going to be using spring clamps to hold them on. You can also use shrink tube is what's recommended. As far as the plumbing coming off of the little Y fitting right here into our check valves, and the check valves are notated here with arrows. That way your system stays primed. It doesn't let any of that backflow coming back into the engine, also for exhaust. But this tube right here can be your regular Tygon that branches off into the check valves. And I still have the other one to run onto the other side. Those will come up to our mufflers. Now, one of the things about this system, in order to get a nice even smoke flow, these must be the same length. So if you trim one, you got to trim the other. If you got to leave one long, make sure the other one stays long, but you need them to be equal. So I'm waiting for some of these. I'm officially out of them. I've used just regular zip ties here. You can use spring clamps, you can use twist wire, whatever works for you and whatever your preference is. I like using zip ties for that stuff. Otherwise, as soon as we get the other one in, we will get that stuff hooked up to our mufflers. And now it's time to go inside to continue on with the smoke system. All right, so where we are on the outside, I've gone ahead and drilled the hole for the throttle. I am not using a metal linkage here. I am going to use some goldenrod, if you will. That is a plastic-like material that'll ride in a sleeve. I will tell you in just a minute why you should avoid metal linkage if at all possible. I've used it in the past. I've gotten away with it. Did I get lucky? I don't know, but I'm going to show you guys or tell you guys what the right way to do things. What you choose to do will be up to you. So anyway, that hole is drilled. We have that rough fit. You could see our smoke system where we are with it. I still have some cables that are going to need tidied up or, you know, covered in some convoluit and run through those holes. But we have our ignition wires held in place. And now the last of these will just hang into the spark plugs. Again, they'll hang out the cowl till the cowl is on, plugs are on, then we'll go ahead and we'll put those on. Otherwise, at this point, I can't do much more out here till we get this whole plane spun around and we get to the inside so we can work. And I got to spin it around because the cab's on this side. I don't have that much room on that side of the bench. I prefer to work over. Continuing with the smoke install, so this line right here is going to be running back to the pump. So I left it really long, as you can see, because we need to figure out exactly where it's going to be plumbed, how far it's going to go, so forth and so on. This hole right here is center of gravity recommendation. So I would like to keep that tank right here. So that way, as it empties, we don't have a CG change. Now, the fuel tank is ahead of the CG, and there's not a whole lot we can do about that. It almost guarantees you'll always be nose heavy, I guess, which is okay. The smoke pump is recommended to be mounted vertically. So your input and output tubes right here run front to back. That's a nice platform. Ideally, I would like it to be right there, and I still just may make a wood platform for that thing to bring it close, but ultimately whether it's here nor there, that extra inch, I guess, doesn't matter to me a whole lot. Everything should stay primed and full of smoke fluid once you turn it on for the first time. So either way, that's going to be that location. That's going to be the pump. Our tubing will cut probably about 6 inches longer than what it is right here, so I have room to work. But I'm going to do something with this flooring, and I'm also painting down there should I ever have a spill. I don't want it to soak into the wood. So we are going to paint or seal one or the other, all of that wood down below, and then I'm actually getting some green carbon vinyl to place up here, which is going to really dress up that whole inside look a little bit. And with that stuff down there being painted, we'll kind of assure that, you know, I've sealed things the best that I can. Otherwise, that stuff's not here yet, so we're going to take a break doing any of the install until we get that floor painted and we get this stuff covered. So here you can see that is the location I am going with for my throttle control servo. That is that rod that we put up out of the front location, as you can see right in the inside of there. So what we're going to do is rough up that tube a little bit, put some epoxy on it. So I'm kind of turning it there, I hope you can see it. That way that thing's epoxied into place and the sleeve comes in and out. We're going to cut this thing to length, probably right up there, and place it in some type of custom made holders. And that way that flexible tube comes out, and then we'll attach it with probably Hyman ball link, so it attaches up here. Now, this is a Pro Modeler servo. This is the DS110 Mini. Now, why I went with this coreless servo is it's super fast. So on throttle, it's ultra responsive. It's probably better than my capabilities are as far as being able to control the throttle quickly through different maneuvers. But the reason that we use non-metal linkage, everyone says, well, it's going to transfer electricity, it does this, it does that. Anything that moves in this plane will transmit vibration, and if it's metal, that transmits as what they call a reactor, even better, into something like a metal servo arm. Will vibrate it. It vibrates that shaft. That shaft is attached to the main gear. The main gear, underneath it is the potentiometer, and that potentiometer is what takes a beating underneath and will eventually fail. And for a lot of guys, I've seen it a couple times now. They have a model up in the air stuck at full throttle. They don't have an optical kill on it. They have a bad setup, and thus failure, and now you're stuck with an out-of-control model flying full speed till it runs out of gas. And most of the time, those landings don't end well. So we're going to have the optical kill. We are going to put in the soft control rod linkage. It is going to be fastened and held into place, but I have everything rough. Now, with this mini servo, you can see that, you know, it's not going to fit in this holder that Seagull's Models includes. So a couple things here. From Pro Modeler, you can get the adapter plate, which is a really nice aluminum custom plate. So that thing will actually get drilled into there. It comes with all the screws and hardware, really nice stuff. You can go ahead and screw that plate in, and then this thing will lock into there. Why did I use this over a regular standard size servo? One, cost, it's cheaper. Two, it's very light. It weighs almost nothing. So, and it's nasty fast. Super fast throttle response servo. Now, on the inside of this model, because I'm running smoke and we're dealing with fuel and everything else, I'm a big proponent. I don't like to put fuel valves out here. I don't know, whatever it is. I'll probably mount fuel valves or something up in here, so that way I can just open the door, fuel into smoke, fuel into the fuel tank. But there is the possibility that you could have a spill of some kind in here. So everything in the bottom I'm going to paint or seal, and then everything up here I'm actually going to cover in a really cool green carbon vinyl. So that's going to look pretty awesome if that turns out the way I want to. And then I'm going to start mounting stuff down in there. So for now, we're going to get that thing installed. I'm going to get that servo mounted into here. We're going to get the tow release servo mounted up into there, and I'm not going to be installing any of this gear until I get this floor sealed and taken care of there. So anyway, there's going to be a little bit of a time lapse. We're going to take a couple day break, and we're going to work on another project, and then we'll come back to this when all my stuff's here. And the next step, we're going to do a couple things. First thing we're going to do is put in the tow release. So we need to find that hole or opening. So with your tow release, so here is the tow release assembly. It's going to come with this rod. Once that servo is installed like that, we're just going to place that rod right up through that hole. You'll see where that starts to poke out. Make sure that you're aligned. And we're just gonna indent it. You could poke a hole if it goes through. I want to be careful not to rip the covering. So now I know where that hole is. And I'm going to take my heating iron and I'm going to press down all that covering on the wood around, press down all that covering around the opening. So that's all nice and tight, and it's not going to come loose. Then we're going to take a nice Sharpie and we're going to follow that outline. Did I say a nice Sharpie? A nice sharp X-Acto. How about that? This is what happens when you try and talk, plus do things that if you screw them up, you're in trouble. Because I think everybody would see your mess up here. I'm just going to rough trim that out so I can see what I'm doing. All right, so why don't we just go ahead now and trim that up to finish, and then we're going to take the nut off and install this thing down in the inside there, but I want to push this covering down a lot more. All right, guys, first thing we're going to do is install this release from the top. It does thread in a little bit up there, so you might have to work it through the first time. And then we're going to take a little bit of Loctite, install some Loctite on the threads. We will install that piece. Make sure that your release up here is nice and centered. Tighten that down. Once the release is tight, we're going to take our control rod that's attached to our servo. And now we can push this up through the center. And make sure you put the screw back in your servo horn. Here in this step, guys, we're going to do a couple things. One, we have to position the altimeter, I guess is what this is supposed to be. So we have to mark it in center, and we're going to just cut away a little bit of the covering, and we're going to epoxy that thing into place. All right, so let's talk about next steps. First thing is we're going to go ahead and I've already touched up a lot of the black in the inside of here since everything is visible. You can see even that I missed some of the spots that they still missed, and I want to touch up in those pillars a little bit just to make that look a little nicer. Once all the black is touched up, we're going to clean everything off. We're going to wipe it down with denatured alcohol, and then we are going to put on our windshield using canopy glue around the inside of the painted surface, tape it into place, and let it dry overnight. And then tomorrow, whenever, we'll come back through and chase it with a few screws. The reason I do that is I've learned my lesson over the years, especially right here when the air pressure changes in the cabin. It flexes the windshield, and unless this stuff is like nuclear war embedded into the wood, it'll want to rip the covering off the wood, and then it tears the covering. So you got to put a couple screws in here to hold it. I can do that after I know my windshield is in place. But otherwise, we're going to get the paint done, the canopy done. You can see what I've done on the inside. I've put my ignition arming switch right there in the dash, which is cool. And I've put my thermal resistance on off switch right there as well. So I just open the door, reach in, touch it, that'll power everything on. And then I'm not putting holes and switches and everything else in the side. I just personally don't like to do that, and that's just my preference. Otherwise, with the seats, we're going to install the seats. You can see I marked centers using just a ruler and the tape I can remove. If you want to take the paint off, like this little piece here, those things are made to lean on the taper on the wood portion, so they'll go kind of like this, and then you glue them into place. I'm going to use epoxy instead of CA. And if you want to rough some of that wood up and expose the wood, get rid of the paint, you can. So one will go there, skip 4 spots. One will go back here. We'll get those put in. We'll get our pilot put in, and that still leaves us plenty of room to work around down here. And then I'm going to show you guys what I'm going to do to seal that up. Windshield's in and drying, pilots are in, seats are in, that's curing as well, but it's good and firm right now. So what I'm going to do is seal off that floor. And as you look down here, I'll pan you guys down. We have some 30-minute epoxy, measuring dish, acid brushes, and something to stir them with some alcohol. So what we're going to do is measure out even amounts of the epoxy. We're going to mix it in here. We're going to add some alcohol to thin it out so it's a thin, watery kind of substance. And that way I can then brush the whole inside of this plane and seal off the bottom. I'm opting not to paint it just because I think the paint is kind of questionable if it really gets in and seals things. This stuff I know will run into all the cracks, little nicks and crannies, nooks and crannies, stuff like that, and definitely seal things up, and it also make it a little stronger. So let's get to mixing. Ah, look what we got. We got our green vinyl. Time to get it installed. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do this whole bottom layer. Hopefully that turns out. And if it does, maybe we'll do the top if we have enough. All right, let's get to work. All right, guys, if you enjoyed that build portion of the Seagull's Model 122-inch Super Decathlon from Gator RC, do me a favor, smash that thumbs up button. If you're going to hit the thumbs down, do that thing twice for me. Like, share, subscribe, all that cool shameless plug stuff. Links for everything is down in the description below. I hope you guys join me for the next episodes so we can get this thing out for the maiden. With that being said, it's Brendan here at Just Plain Crazy. You guys are just plain crazy for always hanging out and watching. I appreciate every one of you guys. I wish you guys happy flights. Peace out.